A story has the ability to break through someone's barriers and touch their heart without asking for permission. This story shows how God leaves the 99 in search of the one that is lost. This is the story of how Sam became a Christian. Sam was born 13th of January, 1988. Raised in London Islington N1, most of his teenage years were spent in a rough council estate called Pack, where settling disputes the old-fashioned way wasn't uncommon. Physical hand-to-hand combat at times could be a daily occurrence, rival against rival, or even just for entertainment. And though the odds wasn't always in Sam's favor, he knew to be aggressive. As a product of his environment, trouble eventually caught up with Sam. Being arrested for violent offenses, Sam was incarcerated in young offenders' prison, where he served 1 year out of a 2-year sentence. During his time incarcerated, Sam developed a passion for the gym, trying his best to avoid a lifestyle that involved drugs, violence, and more prison. Sam knew the gym was his only hope of escaping a life of crime. Upon Sam's release from young offenders not long before his 18th birthday, with help from his probation officers, he attended London's South Bank University, where he eventually studied for his A-levels in anatomy and physiology, to then actually finding employment and establishing himself as a fitness instructor and personal trainer. All the studying and hard work seemed to be paying off for Sam, from a juvenile mess-up to now being a certified registered exercise professional, with a secure career and stable home built alongside his childhood partner Adele. Even Sam's older brother introduced 2 new additions to the family in February 2009, twin boys. Little did anyone know of the heartbreaking tragedy that was about to strike. 9 months after the twins were born, in November of 2009, baby Archie contracted the worst kind of meningitis and sadly passed away. Not only did witnessing the death of his nephew affect him in a profound way, but Sam had to watch his older brother endure a kind of grief not many people ever experience. This was the beginning of a downward slope that spiraled Sam completely out of control. His motivation for self-discipline faded away, and he began self-medicating his painful grief with cannabis, alcohol, and cocaine. This only made things far worse, resulting in outbreaks of uncontrolled episodes, from being unable to get himself out of bed to sudden bursts of rage. This resulted in Sam having to compromise with specialist doctors and surrender himself to Highgate Mental Health Center. While at his lowest point, in a total pit of despair, for the first time in his life, Sam genuinely cried out to God, but with meaningful intentions. Little did he expect God to actually answer his call. From Sam's own words, he describes what he calls a supernatural event.
As I sat there on this particular day, riddled with anxiety as usual, with my knee trembling, my hands constantly fidgeting, this washing machine-like effect within my mind where my thoughts just would not turn off. I was sat by a window, and outside you could hear the world, the traffic, roadworks, sirens going off from police or ambulance. And all of a sudden, as I cried out to God, everything suddenly went quiet, as if someone turned the volume down and just put the entire world on pause. Even the washing machine-like effect within my mind just suddenly stopped. And the feeling of reassurance, peace, love just overwhelmed me. I didn't see no figure appear before me. I didn't hear no audio voice with my own ears. But it was like this presence was telling me and letting me know, no matter how horrific things may get, everything will be okay. And as this presence began to gradually disappear, I could hear the world get turned back on again. I could hear the roadworks, traffic, and all I could do was weep, because I knew this experience actually happened to me.
Following this experience, at first, it wasn't something he would openly talk about, but Sam was convinced in the existence of a God. Though some would say his experience was influenced by the prescribed medication encouraged to take by the doctors, Sam was convinced he had a supernatural experience. And this experience was the beginning of a relentless hunger and thirst for any evidence that could lead Sam to the God that he claimed to have encountered. And this evidence, according to the sheer populated numbers on Earth, pointed to none other than the Abrahamic faiths. In Sam's ignorance, pride, and lack of knowledge, he completely dismissed the commonly known concept of a crucified man who was born of a virgin mother, walked on water, and was raised from the dead. His focus was set on Islam, but little did he know, when reading the Quran, it wouldn't be that easy escaping the known name, Jesus or Isa.
Oh, I got annoyed when reading the Quran, simply because it claimed to be speaking of the very same Jesus that I dismissed as the Tooth Fairy. When reading all 114 chapters of the Quran, it seems to mention Jesus more than it does Muhammad. From Jesus being born of a virgin mother to healing the sick and giving sight to the blind. And the thing that caught my attention when reading the Quran is that it specifically mentions by name Jews and Christians, which tells us by common sense that Jews and Christians came before the Quran was written, 600 years before to be precise. Yet in chapter 10 verse 94 of the Quran, Allah tells Muhammad if he is in doubt to ask those who have read the book before him. Yet the Quran gives us a different narrative. Quite early on within the Quran, you find in chapter 4 verse 157 that it states Jesus was not killed nor crucified, though it appeared. And even though I hadn't yet investigated the Bible, it wasn't hard for anyone to understand that the Christians believed Jesus was crucified, hence all the images of Jesus on a cross. Also then realizing that the New Testament is called the New Testament because the Old Testament came before the New Testament, which told me I had to start from the beginning with the Old Testament.
Now being equipped with this information, Sam knew it was back to the drawing board. Understanding the chronological order in which the God of the Abrahamic faiths interacted with mankind, Sam began researching the first 5 books of the Old Testament, known as the Torah, then the entire Tanakh, which is the remaining books of the Old Testament. Using study books like Hebrew interlinears for clearer knowledge, Sam came to notice a specific individual spoken of within the Old Testament as a promise.
When reading the Old Testament, the thing that caught my attention the most was a specific figure spoken of to redeem all of mankind. Now, the word Messiah is used on quite a number of people, such as King David, where Prophet Samuel anoints his head with oil as King of Israel. The word Messiah simply means to be anointed, the anointed one. But the Old Testament speaks of a specific Messiah, specific anointed one, who will redeem all of mankind. And the Old Testament gives us clues into how we can identify this specific Messiah in what is called messianic prophecies, such as where the Messiah would be born, found in the book of Micah chapter 5 verse 2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from of old, from everlasting. The Old Testament also tells us this Messiah will be born of a virgin, found in the book of Isaiah chapter 7 verse 14. Therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. The Old Testament even tells us that this Messiah will take on the iniquity of us all, in the book of Isaiah chapter 53 verses 5 and 6. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, we have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. Even the Old Testament book of Zechariah chapter 12 attempts to give us a prophecy as to what would happen during the last days. And this is what it says in verse 10. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son. And because this specific anointed Messiah redeems all of mankind by taking on the iniquity of us all within his own suffering, the prophet Daniel tells us of a vision he has where he sees the Messiah receive his reward for redeeming all of mankind, written in the book of Daniel chapter 7 verses 13 and 14. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So this Son of Man who comes with the clouds of heaven is given dominion, glory, and a kingdom where all peoples, nations, and languages will serve him in a kingdom that will never be destroyed, which is eternity. Who was also born of a virgin mother, who was also born in Bethlehem, and who also took the iniquity of all of mankind. Sound familiar to you? At this point of reading the Old Testament, I knew it was time to pick up the New Testament.
Now that Sam was familiar with these clues and how to identify this Messiah through the messianic prophecies revealed within the Old Testament scriptures, when researching the New Testament from up-to-date editions of Greek interlinears, of course Sam looked for what the Old Testament had already revealed about this anointed Savior for all mankind.
Straight away when reading the New Testament, it had me hooked. How bold it was in the claims of saying Jesus fulfills these messianic prophecies from the Old Testament. Almost straight away upon opening the New Testament in Matthew chapter 1 verse 23, it claims the fulfillment of Mary being the virgin. Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. And then straight away in the opening of Matthew chapter 2 verse 1, it declares where Jesus was born. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, even from the words of Jesus himself claims in the book of Matthew chapter 26 verse 28 that he is come to shed his blood for the remission of sins. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. Then we find the ultimate claim made by Jesus, which seals the deal of his crucifixion. During his trial against the high priest Caiaphas, where the priest asked Jesus a question, and the answer Jesus gives profoundly changed my life. This is found in the Gospel according to Mark chapter 14, 61 and 62. But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him and said unto him, Art thou the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man seated on the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Not only does Jesus claim to fulfill all the Old Testament prophecies, such as being born in Bethlehem, being born of a virgin mother, suffers for the redemption of mankind, but Jesus himself claims to be the very Son of Man, who every nation, language, and people will serve for eternity. Jesus had me completely hooked. Reading through all of these radical claims that he makes about himself had me completely drawn in by anything else he had to say. And when reading through the profound words of Jesus Christ, I ended up experiencing the very same feeling that I felt within the lowest point of my life. Comfort, reassurance, safety that no matter how horrific things may get, everything will be okay. And Jesus' own words gave me some kind of understanding as to what this was I was experiencing, found in the Gospel according to John chapter 15 verse 26. But when the Comforter is come, whom I will send unto you from the Father, even the Spirit of truth which proceedeth from the Father, he shall testify of me. Since believing in the death, burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ and accepting him as my Lord and Saviour, my life has profoundly changed. My nature has completely changed as to who I once was. I've realized that everything in this world is temporary. All the pleasures of the flesh is temporary, but Jesus Christ is the only one who will be with you forever. I will never claim to be the moral example of what Christianity is. That title alone belongs to Jesus Christ. But one thing I am certain of, I am no longer the man that I once was.
Sam now lives as a working family man, still with his childhood partner who also accepted Christ as her Lord and Savior, with their 2 sons. As a Christian, Sam now encouraging his brothers and sisters in the faith through fellowship and his personal social media accounts with content that defends Christianity.